A very good afternoon, and thank you so much for having taken the time to join the session today. My name is Jay Reddy. I work at the convergence of product and growth. Now, that's a very fancy way to say that I'm a product manager for the identity and access management suite of products at ManageEngine. I've had the pleasure to work with security folks for the last 8 years, and it's been a beautiful, beautiful journey. And it's my third visit to Australia, and I'm certainly happy that we get to meet in person after a couple of years. It's a good feeling to be in front of you all. Now, I'm certain that the second day, that too right after lunch, is in the best of sessions to be presenting at. But I'm sure that you, as an audience, are already pumped with all the adrenaline that you need, that you've gotten over the last 2 days with all the cybersecurity threats and attack information that we've got. I'm going to make sure that I give you my dose of adrenaline and rush as well through this presentation. That much I can ensure. So do stick along. It's just going to be 30 minutes. There's going to be a lot of information exchange, knowledge trade, essentially, through the next 30 minutes. Let's see how this goes. Now, for us to be able to future proof our identity access management and IT security, it makes sense to contextualize where we are as a community right now. Now, if you look at the security landscape per se, there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation, defragmentation, and deep fakes out there, and we are supposed to defend against all of that. AI has been added to this whole mix and has made the problem for us even bigger. The last 2 years, since October 2022, we've seen a crazy uptick in the interest in generative AI and its use cases. I'm certain that we have folks right here who already started implementing it in the context of an enterprise. Where does AI come in? There are, in my opinion, only three simple ways to sort of put it into context for you. You have the attacker, you have the defender, and you have the organization. The attacker tries to use the AI to probably fast track their attack and do it very quietly. The organizations are trying really, really hard to police their users from safely and responsibly using these generative AI tools like chat GPTs of the world in ensuring that they don't input company information that's critical, or PII for that matter, or some patented information for that matter. So one set of group that needs to certainly adapt, while the attackers do, while the organizations do, we as defenders might as well start looking at adopting AI in our security practices. That's where this whole journey for us is going to start. Now, in the last 2 3 years, the attack surface has become a lot more exposed. Your workforce is more remote than ever before. Identities have become the new perimeter, and it's become certainly a cakewalk for an attacker with the kind of sophisticated tool sets that they have to attack or launch an attack or a program against your organization. What do you do now? Now, as a CISO, you already are aware that your organization is making use of these enterprise use cases, and attackers are evolving to not just do ransomwares anymore or phishing attacks anymore. They want to target your AI. They very well know that you have AI use cases and business use cases in place. Why not start right there? That's what they want to do. Now, with a quick show of hands, can I just get a read on the room, figuring out how many of you all have AI use cases, your end users practically using ChatGPT, if I were to simplify that for you? Oh, wow. That's surprising. In fact, I think we don't need the rest of the session. Joking. You are eventually going to get to a point where you will need to use AI. Your organization is going to use AI, and that's going to be the imperative. And what are the attackers doing to make you vulnerable? Simply speaking, they initiate adversarial AI campaigns against you, or ML campaigns against you. They poison your data lake. They essentially attach a malicious code to a third party software that you've installed, wait for it to sink into your organization and get its roots, and then start exfiltrating data. They invert your model, they retrain your AI model to sort of not detect an attack. That's as well happening as we speak. So input manipulation, model inversion, data poisoning, all of this are happening as we speak, and organizations have to learn how to defend against themselves. Now wait, let's take a step back. We've read the room, and most of you are all on the precipice of implementing AI or starting, or AI is in your horizon. Now, what about your current security infrastructure? That isn't going to not be attacked. It's not just the AI models that your attackers are bothered about. They're able to do their whole attack modeling much better. They're able to test their attack code. They're able to test it for scalability. They're able to test the code and deploy the code quietly. While they do it, they're also able to do behavioral analytics of your user and see where are your vulnerable users, target them, socially engineer them, send out targeted phishing campaigns. So how do you defend your organization? That's the biggest question that we intend to answer right here. Now, when you are at this whole security posture management story, it's usually fancy to start with the detection and the response bits. That's more glamorous, but the hygiene bit is actually one that's unattended. In fact, for most of us, like what Felix was saying yesterday in one of his sessions, we were taught how to be hygienic. We forgot how to wash our hands, and there was an application that told us how long we should wash our hands. Now, that is the state of humans and hygiene in general. Now, when it comes to identity hygiene, it becomes a lot more complex for organizations to defend against themselves or attackers, if defend for themselves against attackers, if there isn't an hygiene scheme in place. It can be simple, something very very simple. You start by just implementing MFA. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands. I'm going to assume that we all have implemented MFA. If not, better do right away. It starts by breaking that inertia towards that identity hygiene journey. You start by implementing MFA. You look out for inactive users or dormant users in your organization. Find out who are those users whose passwords are set to never expire. Find out and patch those unpatched vulnerabilities that we have been procrastinating. There are many aspects of identity that have become more important than before, because now identity is connected to every other network, every other data point in your organization, or a resource, or a workload, or on the cloud, and it's dispersed, right? It becomes increasingly difficult to defend unless your identities are hygienic. If I infiltrate into your on-prem AD and corrupt it, obviously that's going to get transfer to the cloud on your Azure AD as well. So where do you start? You start by being precautious, you start by being hygienic about your identity, and you start somewhere so that you break that inertia. We aren't expecting you to change everything overnight. Fixing your security posture is certainly not a overnight action. It's more of a marathon. We are looking to correct our physical posture. We need to go to the gym, work out for a year, do yoga and whatnot. Same is the case with your security posture. It requires time, it requires assessment, it requires validation, it requires feedback and improvement. That's how you correct your security posture. For you, while you are at this journey where you're fixing your security posture and you're also handling your identity hygiene, it makes sense if you do the whole thing automatically. You have a very clear joiner mover lever sort of setup. You find out who requires what level of access, orchestrate the right privileges to them, remove right when they don't need them. Similarly, also have an orchestration in place to at least defend against basic attacks. So that is the whole identity hygiene story being augmented to your security operations story. Now, try building toolkits and solutions and put in place systems that are composable, that are augmentable, and right when you don't want them, be able to pull the plug. Because we just spoke about how attackers can use AI against us. So that agility is what we need for our security posture. And while we got our identity hygiene out of the way, it's important that we are also able to protect our organization against threats from a detection and response standpoint. Now, the whole AI imperative for identity threat detection and response comes from a place where you'd want the response to be automatic. You'd want the response to be something that can work at scale. You'd want it to be coupled by a real time observability and a detection platform that also is able to detect and only tell you the real threats, not detect and give you the false alarms. False alarms put you to fatigue. You will get to a point where you'd be fatigued and not want to act on them anymore. It's only human to behave like that, which is why we need systems in place that can cut out the noise and just relay what's most important, just relay the right alerts that your organization requires. We've got a system to detect, we've got a system to respond, we've got automations in place that can work at scale to respond. And also, while all of this happens, we are sitting on a ton of data that we are generating through all of this. Your threat surface is exposed, your attack surface is exposed. There are attackers out there targeting your system as we speak. For a quick read on the room, how many of us have gone through at least one attack in the last 3 years? Wow. Are there any auditors in the room? Oh, you can certainly be honest about it because there aren't any, and you can tell us how many of us have been through. I'm certain that we have. Maybe if you are at a point where you are sure about that you've not gotten attacked, then you can be double sure that there is an attacker who is infiltrated in your organization, has some level of code or a malware or a piece of virus that's in one of your employee systems that is about to blow up. That's the situation that we are handling. The attacks have increasingly become very stealth, they've become very silent, and your existing systems are not trained to detect them. So you will have to be able to draw context from the complex pattern of information that you have. So your data sets are available on prem, on cloud. They're generated by identities and their access. They're generated by data that is being accessed. They're generated by your devices and how they're being authenticated. There are a billion touch points as we speak, and your data learning has to be multimodal. Am I able to connect the dots? That's the question that you will have to be asking yourself. Now, what do we intend to accomplish with this? There are three things that, in fact, you can do when you set out to uh, go on a journey fixing your security posture. It starts by understanding where do you require protection or what do you require protection against. How can I detect if there are attacks on the way? How can I remediate or respond if I am attacked? So, in the context of AI, we can put it as predictive, prescriptive, and reactive. Now, we'll take some time to go over these three use cases: the predictive bit, the prescriptive bit, and the remediative bit. When it comes to the predictive AI, which is more along the protection standpoint, the most fundamental part where you grant the attacker the keys to your kingdom is access control. If we do not have systems that can dynamically look into how access control is being managed and adapt your access control policies per your current organization infrastructure, rest assured we are going to set ourselves for a recipe of disaster. What do we do right here? Our access control system should be able to learn from our evolving nature of organization. If you are onboarding 100 new users, you should be able to have your access control policies update themselves, or at least have suggestions from your identity intelligence system to tell you, hey, these are 10 new users who have been added to the finance department. Extra precaution has to be taken in implementing MFA for them, or having identity hygiene done for them, or ensuring that they don't have more access than they require. It can also be the counter. They are existing users in your organization, they are moving to another department. Let's say you're a financial or banking institution. You have someone working in the loan granting department moving to the investment department. Now, that's a disaster that you'd want to prevent. What if they grant a loan for themselves and invest the money wherever they want to? That's something that you want to avoid. Insiders, right? You'd want to see how you can detect and prevent against such a situation. You'll also have to figure out how do you model around the risks that are prevalent already. Where are my vulnerabilities as I know? Where are my potential risks? So, adept scan of your organization's security posture is required, and AI can do it much better in sort of piecing this puzzle together in finding out how can you model against the known vulnerabilities. Ransomwares have been on the rise. In the last 3 years, ransomwares have 10x. The economics around ransomware is quite fascinating, if I were to put it that way. It's become an industry altogether. Back in the day, it was just an attacker trying to set out a ransomware and try to demand a ransom. Now it's a very different ecosystem where there are organized bodies, ransomware as services that I, if I want to, can go to the dark web, subscribe to the service, deploy against your organization. And they also, the service providers also offer help desk support for the person whoever has been attacked. So I get the ransom, they get paid a part of the ransom for me using the ransomware service, and the organization again pays them for decrypting the data. Now that's how sophisticated this whole cyber criminal mafia around ransomware attacks has become. What do you do right here? How can you defend against that? You need a framework that evolves with the new age ransom attacks. Every single time when something goes out, is made public, your system has to be able to feed into that data, internalize that, and create policies and playbooks that can predict such an attack that are underway in your organization and prevent that from happening, which is where the whole proactive threat hunting pattern comes into the play. How do you proactively look out for threat? What was more inward looking, what was more responsive right after an attack has happened, has to be outward looking. You should be on the lookout to see who is going to attack you next. In fact, to an extent, that expect an attack and start thwarting against them, or start building postures, or solidifying your posture against that. One actionable thing that you can do to help you get there is continuous authentication or point in time authentication. Are you able to look at who is accessing which of your resources, from what part of the world, at what time of the day, through what network, from what IP, and build context around it? And right when you think something is off, right in the middle of a session, attacker can remotely take over your user's laptop or unattended device and initiate an attack. You should be able to get your system to look into such deviations or anomalies, predict something is going wrong right there, and kick out that user as an orchestration response, and authenticate them before they are let to perform any further action. So that's where your continuous persistent automation comes into the picture. Can I be preemptive about all these threats? Yes, I will have to be able to preemptively disrupt all these impending threats. That's the whole use case for predictive AI. I should be able to detect threats before and as and when they occur. I should be able to prevent my organization from going through a ransomware attack because I have a framework in place. I should be proactive to hook into threat intelligence framework across the world and hunt for these threats that might attack. I should be able to model my risk around the vulnerabilities that are currently present in my organization and model my defense against that, and intelligently set up an access control system or policy in place that keeps updating, that keeps self updating, for me to be able to preventively disrupt these threats. Now, that's the predictive part. That's where you predict what sort of disruption might happen and you prevent that. Now, the next bit is what you prescribe right when you have been infected. Just like going to a doctor, you need a doctor in house to prescribe how to counter when a threat is detected. You need to have intrusion detection systems that can cut across different target systems. You are an AD organization, you are an AAD organization, you have mobile devices, you are on Google Cloud, you are on multi cloud, you have workloads, containers, DevOps, whatnot. You should be able to dissect across all of this and connect the dots to have an intrusion detection system that is truly holistic, that can look at context from identity data, that can look at context from data being accessed or data access governance, or how your network is being infiltrated, or your device is being tampered with, or the vulnerabilities being exploited. These don't exist in silos. At any given point in time, one is interlinked to the other, and your intrusion systems today are very siloed in their approach. They just detect intrusion from one touch point, and you wouldn't be able to build a kill chain unless you're able to detect holistically. For example, if you look at phishing attacks, they have evolved to become so sophisticated that your systems cannot detect them anymore. We were talking about adversarial ML and data poisoning a while ago, right? Attackers have become so smart that they can sort of get your phishing detection engine off guard by sending out phishing emails that don't look like phishing emails, that aren't intended to look like phishing emails, that aren't even phishing emails, to just offset your detection system to think that any future such email wouldn't be a phishing email. So spam filter is marked off on that. A phishing filter is marked off on that, and little later, that's the exact email that gets you in trouble. But worry not, we have our users, they'll do their part. We have users who will click on an email that says do not click. We'll have users who will click download an attachment that says do not download. So there comes the whole education bit. What do we do about that? I'm not sure if you can educate your users with AI. Probably the neural link that Elon Musk put out can be of some help. Who knows? So this anomalous traffic that we are talking about, right? We'll need to be able to detect anomalous traffic from anomalous sources, use threat intelligence to defend ourselves against that. Can I use behavioral biometrics to protect my users? Why not? In fact, accesses can be made both secure and easy at the same time if you have behavioral biometrics in place. As much it becomes difficult for an attacker, it also becomes easy for a user who is accessing from their office network, from the device that was given by office in the time of the day that they usually work. Access is contextual, so it's effortless or seamless. So I'm able to do this enablement as well. Now, to go one step back and see if we can offer prescriptions based on what's my current state of infrastructure by visually mapping out my IT infrastructure and finding out where are the cracks. That's where your whole digital fracture visualization or attack path visualization comes to be. You wouldn't be able to do it manually. You can't do it with a pen and paper as a human being. It becomes increasingly difficult, which is where you need an AI system that can go through all of it. The agent reads all of that, finds out all the connections that are made between these devices and entities, and tell you where exactly is your break point, where exactly is that epicenter from where an attack can emanate in your organization. That's the sort of prescriptive AI use cases that we need to use for detection. Now, you've tried to protect, you've tried to detect, but if all else fails, you should be able to be ready to respond with reactive AI, which is where automated security orchestration comes into play. Right when an attack is underway, my system has to be agile in responding to such a threat, because the ransomware time span today is 5 minutes and 50 seconds. You cannot throw a human at this problem because we cannot operate at that speed. By the time you've received an alert and by the time you got to the system, the knock or sock wouldn't be able to respond to it timely. So we'll need to handle this problem of scale and counter it with a system that can automatically orchestrate, automatically neutralize that threat, or autonomously neutralize that threat without human intervention. Now, this is possible from whatever research we've done. You should be able to look at emulating such use cases in your organization. I'll get to that in a bit. But while you are sitting on a ton of data, while you have your existing threat surface, while that's being bombarded by attacks you may or may not acknowledge, but that's the reality. Can I do forensic analysis with deep learning? Can I do research and use the data that my organization's log systems or SIM solutions or observability platforms have generated to forensically dissect this data? Something has gone wrong, you've remediated, that's fine, but you should be able to do a forensic analysis to prevent some future attack from happening, because attackers, they have a specific modus operandi, and you should be able to counter that with your deep learning on forensic data. Now, if it's static, all of your models are static, there won't be much you can do right here. It has to be adaptive. You will have to be able to course correct and see if you can change according to the changing landscape. Your security response must evolve with the security landscape that's evolving, or the cybercrime that is evolving. That's the ask from a reactive AI solution or use cases that you would like to solve. The whole augmentation story that I was talking about earlier, where your toolkit has to be composable, becomes fulfilled if you are able to augment your workforce or your defenders as well into this system of solutions that we are talking about. That's when it gets completed. Am I able to train my defenders to go through a program where they are immersed into a simulation where my AI system simulates these attacks? Am I able to find out what's my mean response time? How am I able to put together a business continuity plan based on how quickly can we defend against these attacks, and immersively train and augment skill sets for our defenders and get them incorporated into this whole ecosystem of AI tools that I'm talking about? Now, when we've got the security posture in place, that we are able to cooperatively improve. It also makes sense if it can self heal itself like Wolverine. That's the fringe case that we're talking about. That's the glorious future that we're looking at. An attack happens, there's a crack, an attacker tries to enter. I've defended them, but the crack still remains. So, can my system self heal and patch that crack? That's the sort of security posture adjustment that we're looking at. Increasingly, the more I say it, security is starting to look like an organism. That's an interesting thought that I'd want you to take home because it's evolving like an organism. Now, if you look at the predictive AI bit, the prescriptive AI bit, and the reactive AI bit, all of this comes together to drive your future ITDR strategy to improve your security posture. Let's say John is a CISO. He wants to sort of get the sign off from his board, from his management, to say okay to implement AI for ITDR, AI for identity hygiene. The big question is they aren't going to be that easy on him because we need to have business justification right here. It goes without saying, we'll start by clearly defining what our business goals are. It goes without saying that we prioritize high impact use cases. Now, the mapping that you do between a security use case and a business use case can look something like this. What happens if I don't install MFA for my users? Now, it might be a simple problem, or at the face, it might look like a simple problem, but you are by de facto violating a lot of regulations because right when you are attacked, and if you did not have MFA solution in place, you cannot avail your cyber insurance. You are being more exposed to an attack. Your attack surface area increases as a result of not having MFA, and therefore you will end up paying a bigger ransom. Or probably the image of your brand goes for a toss. The reputation again is something that you can't manage. So your business continuity plan has to prioritize these high impact use cases and map a business value to it so that you can position this better with your board. Am I able to build a reliable model? Most certainly, yes. Is my model vetted for data sanity? Yes. Is it not already corrupted? Great. Have I ensured that the data sets are safe? Perfect. If all that done, you have a reliable, transparent model in place. The most important thing is for you to be able to sit with your data scientists, is for you to be able to sit with your operations team and management or leadership for that matter, and come together to define what exactly these business goals are so that you can continuously align and iterate your AI models to work in your favor, which is where you get to the point where you're able to measure the impact of such an implementation and the value that it can give your organization. Unless you have a clear value proposition in place, you've done the whole year of implementation, you've seen and proven material value, I don't think you'll have a case, or John will have a case to buy the solution again for the next year. So you go back home thinking about AI implementations as to how they improve the overall operational efficiency. How do they cut down all the noise and then help you focus on making data driven decisions and reduce your mean time to respond? How can I fix problems before they occur? And if and when I detect a crack in my system, how am I able to improve my fault tolerance by fixing them? Can I look at a system that can self heal itself? Great, nothing better than a self correcting security posture management. While I do all of it, obviously, as a byproduct, my cost centers go down. I'm able to better use my resources. They don't spend time manually handling problems, they are better spent elsewhere. And can I also, on the flip side, while I secure, have all these data that I'm sitting at, get my AI system, for example, a generative AI use case where my AI system can go through all of this, talk about all the defense that I've done, and consolidate and offer me a continuous report, offer me a real time compliance report that I don't need to generate right when an auditor comes to my organization. Am I able to do it continuously? Is the question that I'm able to ask right now. Am I continuously complying to these regulatory adherences? Am I able to also mitigate these risks as and when they happen and manage these risks as and when they happen? If all else fail, John can certainly take this story to the organization. The end user digital experience certainly is going to become much better right when you put or incorporate these AI use cases. Seamless end user experience. In the context of all these top 8 points, essential eight, essentially helping John get that sign off. How does an implementation really look like? You think about the identity fabric as one consolidated layer of your identity governance, administration, privilege access management, and access management all in one plane. You'll have to look at solving cases like persona modeling. Who gets what level of access on day one? Can I revoke just in time, just enough access right when somebody does not need? Can I orchestrate that automatically? Analyze who has what level of privileges, and if there are excess access privileges, can I revoke them through an access attestation campaign that self starts? And most importantly, for those of us who have swept these inactive dormant accounts under the rug, can we identify them? Can we dig them out and deprovision them or take the corrective action? That's from an identity governance standpoint, with the whole cloud entitlement and infrastructure management becoming a big topic, and cloud being a big thing here in Australia. I've heard a lot of you all say so. It becomes more complex with entitlements spread across these Google clouds of the world, AWSs of the world, Alibaba cloud or whatnot. How do we connect the dots and ensure that these unutilized entitlements on the cloud are deprovisioned right in time? Not forgetting that it's not just about human identities. Almost in the order of a factor of three, we have machine identities as well in our organization. Am I able to secure both the privileged human identities and the machine identities? That's the question that we need to ask when we are looking at these accounts from a privileged access management standpoint. From access management, these are interesting use cases, making our lives easier with contextual authentication, continuous authentication, conditional access, user behavior analytics, risk profiling, risk scoring, proofing the identity, mapping it against a government authenticated central database of identities, or most importantly, prescriptive access intelligence. Can I prescribe who needs to get what level of access? That's a beautiful journey that we can set out to take. So your whole identity hygiene and identity threat detection response can come together to improve your security posture towards the zero trust journey that a lot of us have been trying to take for a long time. For us to start, it makes sense to internalize that it's an identity first security story that we are trying to solve. Data becomes more important because I need it to be intact, untampered, and protected and classified. Contextually, be able to respond to threats and be also able to model my risk posture or security posture that's reactive to what is happening in my organization as we speak. Gain that observability, universal observability from one place to see how these dots are connected: identities, devices, users, and machines and network. How does that all plug into that one common grid? And if I'm able to do all of this, rest assured your compliance becomes a continuum. Thank you so much for being such a lovely, lovely audience. Now, what we'll do is we'll want you to come over to our booth. We are at booth 220 in the exhibit showcase level 2. We'd want to see and talk to you to see where are you on this whole journey of zero trust. We'll help you evaluate your current posture. We'll help you see if we can take you forward. Most of the use cases that we discussed today, we've got solutions that can help you with those challenges. We'd certainly love, love, love to see you over at our booth. Thank you so much for being such a lovely audience. You all have a great rest of the conference.